intersection of Bothell Historic Main Street and 101st Avenue Northeast stands Bothell Furniture, which has been in business since 1985. Long ago, it was the site of the Ericksen store, one of the earliest retail businesses in Bothell, founded by a legendary citizen who was a businessman, postmaster, state legislator, bank president, school board member, and church leader. Among Gerhard Ericksen's many contributions to the community, he also is known for giving Bothell its name.
Gerhard Ericksen was born in Molde, Norway in 1860, and he graduated from high school in 1879, and he came from a fairly well-to-do family. His father had some financial losses that led to him needing to make a change. So Gerhard booked passage to America, and he came to America in 1881, April, and he paid for the passage of his family. There were 13, his mother, his sister, and also his good friend Jacob Mohn. They landed in New York, and Jacob Mohn elected to stay in New York for a couple of years, and then Gerhard decided to move west, and he ended up first in Sanborn, North Dakota, and then in Valley City. And there he wheat farmed for 2 years. He decided that he was going to travel further west, go out to the coast, so he borrowed $35, got to Pasco, Washington, and then he ventured on to Portland, and he ferried across the Columbia River, and he walked up to Olympia and took a ship to Seattle. And he stayed there for a little while, and he worked in a tin shop. But he was still interested in finding land. So at some point he reconnected with Jacob Mohn, and the two of them crossed Lake Washington and walked to Juanita. Well, then they walked further north, came up to this area, and they secured a surveyor, and he looked for some land. And Gerhard was able to homestead on, I think, 160 acres in north, about where Country Village up in that area is.
In May 1888, Gerhard married his sweetheart, Dorothea Christina Love, days after she arrived from their hometown in Norway, where she had been teaching. Also in the late 1880s, David Bothell platted the town and sold the first lot to Dorothea. That lot became the site for the Ericksen store.
So Gerhard Ericksen had established the Ericksen Mercantile on 101st in Main in Bothell, and they got word that there was so much mail coming up to this area that they needed to establish a name for the town. So Gerhard looked around and he said, well, there are a lot of Bothells in town, and that's a good family. Let's name it Bothell. And in 1888, he was asked to be the postmaster, the first postmaster of Bothell. And so he had the post office in his store, and that's where they ran the post office for a number of years. Prior to that time, of course, to get the mail, Gerhard would go down to Greenleaf's home, which was located on the north side of the river near where Stringtown was. And Greenleaf had a rowboat, and so Gerhard would borrow his rowboat and row over to the other side and walk to the Wooden's house, where there was a post there. Susan Wooden was Woodenville's postmistress, and pick up the mail there. However, at times the rowboat was on the south side of the river, so it's been said that he would swim the river with a mail sack in his teeth, and then of course come back by rowboat.
Ericksen's general merchandise sold goods to early settlers and loggers of the area. In the 1880s, a pound of coffee cost 30 cents, and shoppers could buy a pair of overalls for 75 cents. An important establishment in the community, handwritten ledgers housed in the Bothell Historic Museum reveals purchases made at the Ericksen store by the many citizens who shaped Bothell in its early days, including the Bothell family. However, in 1892 and 1893, Gerhard Ericksen experienced several financial losses, particularly due to the Great Depression of 1893. that impacted the entire community. To recover his fortune, he began pursuing the idea of building a flume to carry single bolts from the head of North Creek to the Sammamish River. He secured financing, and the 7-mile flume was constructed in 1895. This project did much to secure the permanence of the community in several ways. To begin with, landowners along the way provided a profitable market for shingle timber. It also ensured an adequate supply of timber at a reasonable cost to Bothell mills. The flume ultimately gave Ericksen the capital he needed to reestablish his mercantile business. In the early days, Gerhard was elected to the school board and was elected secretary to the Norwegian-Danish Evangelical Lutheran Mold Church, a position he held for 30 years. In 1904, he was elected to the state legislature, and through his efforts, the legislature appropriated money for the first state road from Seattle to Lake Forest Park. In 1908, he was elected the first president of the Bothell State Bank. Gerhard and Dorothea had 10 children, 5 of whom survived to adulthood. Their 1913 home is featured twice in Bungalow magazine as an excellent example of bungalow style. Gerhard died in 1920 and was buried in the Bothell Cemetery. He is honored on 101st Avenue Northeast near Main Street as one of the full life-size mural figures alongside his son and grandson, who are also prominent members of the Bothell community. The existing Ericksen store building was constructed in 1926, and though the brick of the facade has been painted, it is still recognizable as the same building today. The building is still owned by the Ericksen family.